The sky was decked out in flecks of red by the time I returned to CID Section 1. It's already this late, huh? Maybe I should just head straight home. My mind was exhausted from the strain of dealing with Rokushiki.
どうでしたか?
Yaginuma called out as soon as he saw me.
疲れたよ。
六式を喋らせただけでもさすがですよ。この僕でさえ、奴の口を開かせたことは数回しかありませんから。
Toot your own horn a little louder there, buddy.
よく喋らせたと分かったな。
簡単です。話を聞けなければ無駄足だったと言うでしょうから。疲れるだけの収穫はあったということでしょう。
喋らせたというよりはうなずかせたというだな。
しかしそれでは誘導尋問じゃないですか。
だから供述としては不十分。うまく立ち回らないと裁判の証拠として認められない。
Though I did believe the inspectors here had the skills to pull that off when all was said and done.
今回は奴に直接関わらない事柄だったから話しただけだろうさ。
I was sure he'd climb up again once it came to the Rokushiki case.
でもお前だってあいつに喋らせたことがあるん。
別に。
Yaginuma looked away. Judging from that reaction, Rokushiki had probably only asked if he could use the restroom or something of the sort.
そんなことよりも先輩、これを見てください。
Yaginuma held out a stack of papers.
典型会の信者名簿です。当然ですが、糸瀬瑞希の名前はありました。ですが、
上園舞は信者じゃなかった。
I assumed as much from how Yaginuma spoke.
そうです。これで典型会と事件との関わりがわからなくなりました。
上園舞の親族や友人など近しい人間に信者。
それは上園舞の関係者を洗い出さないと無理な話ですよ。
低い可能性に時間を割くのも無意味なことで。
こちらの捜査方針から典型会は一旦外すことになりそうです。
You clever bastard. I got that little thought to myself. Thought you likely wouldn't stop probing the blessed congregation just because they'd been taken off the list of suspects. She was no lapdog. She'd carry out her investigation with or without the police to say so, damn right. If anything, having Yaginuma order her around would tick her off so badly she'd keep investigating just to spite him, which was likely what the man himself was banking on. He was setting the board for the possibility that the blessed congregation would come up again over the course of the investigation. If it turned out they didn't, and Toji had just been wasting her time, it'd be of no consequence to him. And it's reverse psychology, otherwise it'd be too late to act if he stopped investigating them for real, only to discover later down the line that they truly had been relevant.
そっちが伝えてくれるなら助かる。俺も怒られたくはないんでね。
構いますよ、当然ね。これはこちらの資料ですからね。
Well, I'm not just
おい
any
それと部外者
outsider.
に渡すわけにはいきませんよ。
I'm Reiji. Ugh, sucks when he's right. It was past 5:30 p.m. by the time Masaki brought Meguri back to her hotel after their outing in Yokohama.
今日もありがとうね。
いや、探偵からは今日自由にしていろと言われ。
気を回してくれたのかな。
それはないと思うけど。
Masaki had told Reichi he was going to Yokohama. Not that he believed his new boss would have given him anything more than an exasperated sigh if he'd heard that, though. It bummed Masaki out a little that he'd been branded a waste of space.
それにしても、今日はたくさん買い込んだね。
Damn, bro, you're gonna have so much luggage to take back. Masaki's good arm was laden with bags bulging with clothes and accessories Meguri had bought at a foreign settlement over in Yokohama.
もういくつかは小包で先に送っちゃったのよ。これも送らないと
Jesus Christ.
さすがに持って帰れ
Oh,
ないわ
wait,
ね。
I've already started mailing my shit back. Oh, god damn. I have that much shit? Meguri
部屋
chuckled.
まで持っていくよ。
ああ、うん、ありがとう。あ、でも
何？
これからお客さんが来るから、もしかしたら会わない方がいいかもしれないわ。
誰が来るの？
ななこさんだけど。
それは確かに会わない方がいいだろうな。
That's crazy though. So we know there's a Sawashiro at the Kichiki hospital, right? Which would lead us, a nurse Sawashiro, which would lead us to believe it's Nanako, right? Once again, I think this goes back to... But no, we don't... Oh. Right. No, Masaki already said that Nanako had found him. Duh. I'm sitting there like, how could Nanako have never found him? She did. She did find him. He said that himself. Nanako had found him, and she agreed to keep silent about it, not tell anyone. He hadn't seen her since his suicide attempt. Yep. Now that Meguri had found him, he figured it was only a matter of time until she did as well. But he wanted to put that off for as long as possible.
俺に会ったことは言わないでくれるかい？
分かってる。
Meguri nodded.
6時くらいには来るから、もう帰った方がいいかもしれないわ。
この荷物だけは運ぶよ。そのくらいの時間はあるだろうから。
ありがとう。
Masuki brought the shopping bags to Meguri's hotel room.
ごめんね。ありがとう。
このくらいのことだったら何の問題もない。
Masuki checked the time after putting the bags down.
そろそろ出た方がいいかな。
そうね。じゃあまた。
ああ。
Masuki went back down to the lobby and froze. Standing in the hotel's lounge was a woman he knew all too well. It was still a little before 6. He had to hide before she spotted him. Thus Masuki turned around and fled down the first floor hallway. Passed through the linen room, unlocked the back door, and escaped outside. Masuki took a deep breath once he was far enough from the hotel. I doubt she saw me. All he could do now was have faith in Meguri and pray she wouldn't rat him out. Ikari headed straight for her brother's agency in Shinjuku as soon as school ended. By the time she bought some living essentials and finished cleaning the place up, it was already dark out. Matsuki hadn't returned yet. Ikari cleaned the kitchenette, took out the trash, and stuffed her brother's laundry into a bag. It was then that she spotted a tiny spider crawling across the paper on the desk. Though reluctant, since it was rather cold outside, she ultimately decided to let the creature loose. She picked up the paper carrying the limping spider. The creature appeared to have lost one of its legs. Ikari remembered hearing that arthropods had no sense of pain. And since the spider had 8 legs, perhaps losing one didn't impede it in any meaningful way? Or perhaps this tiny creature had a different sense of pain than humans and was fighting its own brand of agony. Ikari opened the window and placed the paper at the edge of the wall. Eventually the spider stuck to the wall and crawled outside. Once that happened, she closed the window. She didn't expect to be rewarded in the form of a spider's thread like Kandata had in hell. I don't know that story. Especially not after she'd thrown that spider out into the cold for her own selfish reasons. Ikari put the document back where she'd found it. The words locating someone caught her eye. Curious, she pored over the document. Normally she tried not to stick her nose to her brother's business, so naturally she had no idea who this Naori Kuroyo even was.
お邪魔しています、まさきさん。
Ikari set the paper down and bowed when she saw Masuki enter the office.
お邪魔しているって、ここは別に俺の家というわけでもないし。
でも、今はまさきさんが生活されていますから。あ、そうそう。
Ikari strolled right past Masuki and over to the kitchenette.
まさきさんの湯飲みをこちらに用意しておきました。
わざわざありがとう。
あとは寒い時に羽織る斑点も置いておきますので。
いや、それは悪いよ。あの人が俺の洗濯物を持って行ってくれる感じもしないし。
兄には私から言っておきますから。
Ikari smiled at Masuki.
何かを召し上がりたい場合は給湯のコンロも使います。
Ikari checked the clock. It was just past 6:30.
確か7時頃までは営業しているはずです。
この辺りに銭湯はないかな。
お風呂ですか。確か花園神社の方にあったと思います。
Indeed. That was where the black market and red light district had once been located.
ありがとう。気をつけることにするよ。
何かありましたらうちへ電話をかけてください。
Ikari pointed to the phone.
では私はそろそろ帰りますね。あ、それとシンクの詰まりは大家さんに伝えておきましたので。
何から何まですまないね。
いえ、私にはこのくらいしかできませんから。
Ikari picked up a garbage bag in one hand and a bag with Reiji's clothes in the other.
それではおやすみなさいませ。
送るよ。
心配いりませんよ。ではお気持ちだけいただきます。
Ikari left Masuki with those words. Once outside, she tossed the garbage bag into the building's trash collection spot. She also nearly left her brother's laundry there, resulting in a chuckle at her own expense.
さてと。
Time to get home and make dinner. Nico was still open at this hour, so she decided to drop by there to round up ingredients first. Ooh, red background. Oh! No! A woman lay collapsed on the floor. Still breathing, huh? Happened so spontaneously that the blow hadn't been fatal as hoped. A pair of hands donned gloves before carefully wiping fingerprints off the marble clock that had been used in the attack. Not only was its glass cover broken, but the hands had stopped as well. Left fingers turned the clock back about 3 hours. A little trickery like that wouldn't fool anyone. I would at least puzzle the police for a minute or two. Once finished, the clock was smashed against the woman's skull like a headman's axe. Her body jolted and disgorged spatters of blood. How she was killed wasn't important. All that mattered was the presentation of the corpse. The dying woman was rolled face up and gagged with a towel. A pair of eyes scanned their master. The black cloak dawned upon confirmation that they had been spared of stain by any blood splatter. Utmost caution had been taken regarding personal appearance, so no suspicion would be aroused when the time came to leave the hotel. With all that settled, the knife was unsheathed. Let's get to work. The blade lunged for the woman's abdomen. Pierced her true without meeting any resistance whatsoever. Blood gushed from the new opening. The wound was widened carefully to ensure there'd be no excess blood spatter. Suddenly, the woman's body convulsed. She's still alive. This is no consolation, I know. For what it's worth, I feel terrible about this. I'm so sorry that I couldn't grant you a swift, painless death. I sent a sincere apology to the dull orbs blankly staring back at them. But it's fate's cruel games that are to blame for this. You've done nothing wrong. The woman stopped convulsing. Her head weakly slumped to the side. Those moments of personal lament did nothing to stop the knife from slicing open her abdomen. She bled far less than before, probably because she got limp. Her guts ripped out, expanding the space within her abdomen. The tip of the blade had long since punctured her uterus, leaving a gaping opening. Moments later, the uterus was meticulously carved up. It wasn't like anything was there, however. Nothing but the wielder of the knife's immense hatred for that organ spurred them on. The clay doll was stuffed, and once the wound in her abdomen was wide enough. This is proof of the curse. A needle and thread were used to stitch up the abdomen. Work was done in a flash, signifying growing familiarity with the task. Next order of business. I surveyed the room. So if this is Nanako, right? But also that's what the story wants you to think. The story wants you to think it's Nanako, right? They want you to think it's Nanako. Because, oh, Nanako is the last one to go in there, right? Ooh. 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 If Masaki is Ayako, we know that his sister has a very big jealous streak, correct? We know that his sister is in Tokyo, correct? Now, we know that his sister is part of the very influential family, and that she stuck around in Hitogata, correct? So had there been some traditions passed down, she might have taken part in them, correct? Mayhaps. So this could be Nanako. Using information that she has as a nurse, right? I think Nanako is involved, but my gut instinct is that she's not the actual killer, because that's what the story seems to want you to believe off rip here, is that, oh, it's Nanako. But my immediate thought, especially after we see Karen, right? Yo, Karen, who took up the pharmaceutical business, right? Pharmaceuticals, right? Because typically, with the first two victims, they're immobilized using drugs, right? They're immobilized using drugs, using pharmaceuticals, right? Now, obviously, Karen would have a better chance of getting hold of those. And since she'd been tasked with this, with spreading the curse, right? No, I think I'm onto something. Karen is using her connections, specifically connections with Nanako. Because obviously if Karen's visiting the Kachiki hospital that Nanako also works at, I think those two are in cahoots. Yeah. And I also think it would make sense that if Karen's in Tokyo, there's a very good chance, if Masaki is Ayato, that she has found her brother, and she's a jealous bitch. She sees Mayu being very close with him. She sees the lengths that Mayu goes to. She sees, especially when she finds out that Mayu is getting so close to Hitogata. Boom, offed. We don't know why Mizuki got off, right? But I'm guessing Mizuki was a patient at the Kachiki hospital at some point, and the specific nurse she had would have been Nanako. I'm guessing. And Mizuki, I don't know what her connection is yet. Probably there's something more to Mizuki, right? And it's not just Senri, right? It's not just Senri. It's not the fact that she's part of Senri and there's something there. I think there is something there. Senri, or the Blessed Congregation, they're not innocent in all this. We know this. But Mizuki is how the Senri connection comes into play. I think there's something more to Mizuki besides her Senri connection. Because if we look at Mayu, someone who got too close to Masaki. If this is Megari, that's someone who got too close to Masaki. That's someone who got too close to Masaki, too close to the truth, right? Whatever the truth may be. My current working theory is that our current killer is Karen. She's been brought into the fold in Hitogata, especially as being now taking on her role within the pharmaceutical company. Clearly, she must have a higher role in the village. I feel like she's definitely up there. It's a possibility, and she's using her connections with Nanako, since Nanako's an old friend. Now, whether Nanako knows or not what Karen is doing, that's questionable. But I think Karen is our killer using connections through Nanako, because Nanako's just going to see her as an old friend, an old kid that she used to hang around with, right? Yeah. Now, I don't know what... Now, if it is Karen who ends up being the killer, I don't know what her end goal is. Clearly, there's some connection to Masaki himself, especially if it is Ayato. But see, Mizuki is the one that kind of throws that for a loop. Because Mizuki, as far as we would know, wouldn't have any connection to Masaki or Ayato that we would know. It's too many choices. And honestly, maybe it's not even Karen who's the killer, right? But the one ordering it, right? She's like this head honcho, head of this pharmaceutical company. Clearly her family has a lot of money. So mayhaps she's not the one doing the killing herself, but I feel like she's definitely one that's heavily involved in it in some way. I feel like she knows of her brother's presence in Tokyo, if Masaki is Ayato, obviously. Whoever Masaki is, she knows of her old friend's presence, right? But she doesn't want him to know that. She's keeping her distance because she doesn't want him to know that. She doesn't want him catching on to her. And she knows that he wants to avoid her because he wants to remain hidden, even though she's already found him. I'm thinking that's the case here. They soon locked on a double-doored closet. Shortly thereafter it was open, clothes hanging within shoved to the side. The western belt was soon discovered and strung around the corpse's arm. Yeah. The body was wrapped in a blanket and carried over to the closet, ensuring no blood dirtied the black cloak. Once there, the belt was tied to the rail supporting the hangers. Same was done with the woman's other arm. There, that should do it. The blanket was properly unraveled, eliciting a smile at the parody of a crucifixion. She should at least die looking pretty. Blood trickling down her forehead was scooped up and smeared over her lips. Good. Red lipstick is perfect for a fashionista like her. God motherfucking damn. I knew Megari was going to get murked, though. I knew if Megari did not have connections to the killer, she was one of the next ones to get murked. I knew it had to be. I knew it had to be. I just had this feeling. I'm like, nah, if Megari is not in on whatever business. So, okay. There was that point, right? I'm gonna save. That's gonna stop the phone ringing, right? Yes? Good. Okay, the phone stopped ringing. Cool. But there was that point, right? Where some unknown figure, it like cut to a red screen too, where I thought something, a brutal scene was about to go down, but instead it's just like, I need to convince her. When she sees my perspective, she'll join in, right? There was that whole moment, right? Now that could have been towards Karen, but also it could have been Karen towards Nanako. There's a fair number of she's that could have been that could allude to. But clearly someone got brought into the fold, right? But unfortunately, for me anyway, I'm gonna have to wrap up this recording session here. Very unfortunate for me, because god damn, what a fucking place to end it. I don't, ugh. I'm very curious if now does Masaki come clean to Reiji about this. That's where I'm thinking we go next. Because now, obviously, once Masaki hears the news that Megari's been murdered, he's gonna be very emotional about it. And Reiji's gonna want to know what the fuck's up there. Like, why are you so upset about this? Like, she was just our client. Like, it's very unfortunate, it's very sad to see, but why are you so upset about this? Right? And maybe that's when Masaki finally, spills his guts a little bit, maybe? Maybe, just maybe? I don't know. Very, very interested to see where our story goes from here. But like I said, I am going to have to wrap it up here for today. So it's either going to be a quick transition or a new video, but regardless, I'll see y'all in the next recording session. Until then, base. What is up, everyone, and welcome back to Kawada no Shoujo 2, or The Shell Part 2, either or, whatever you want to call it. In the previous recording session, what all went down? I remember where we exactly left off. So I think during the previous recording session, Masaki finally regained consciousness. Reiji then hired him on as his new apprentice or whatever, but mostly to keep an eye on him, get some information out of him potentially. Megari, one of Masaki's old friends, was spotted in Tokyo, and they relinked together. They hooked up. They were all having fun, being homies and whatnot. And then Megari was the next victim of the current killer. Also, I'm in the settings menu right now because the scene I am loaded into has that phone constantly ringing in the background, and I'd rather not listen to that right now. And then I was constantly flip-flopping between whether I think Masaki is Naori or Ayato. And since then, one of the benefits of, playing these mystery games as a playthrough is that when I edit the videos, I get to rewatch the footage, right? I get to see things again through a new perspective, right? So one thing I did notice, right, was what is it? It's like shortly. What is it after? Oh, right. It's after Reiji convinces Yaginuma to let Masaki go, convinces him he's no longer the prime suspect of Mayu's murder. Masaki ends up running into a woman that we never see her face, we just hear her voice, and she says, "Long time no see." And that, I'm pretty sure, obviously, like I said, we didn't get a voice. I mean, we did get a voice, we didn't get a face, but I'm pretty sure that woman was Nanako, as that would have happened. Yeah, that would have been after Mayu's murder, because of the fact that Masaki had been arrested. And then there was one thing that I hadn't remembered before that I definitely remember now. And that's during the whole flashback sequence in Hitogata. One of my big theories was that one of the boys ended up killing the other one, right? That was one of my big theories. It's why they have a lot of grief in their heart, a lot of trauma. It's why they don't want to go back to the village, because they're worried about people finding out. They're worried about the consequences and fallout of that. And one thing I realized after watching back some of that footage was the New Year scene when everyone's pulling their fortunes, right? And Ayato pulls his, and his says grave misfortune. And he said that all of his categories except for romance were all like negative fortunes, right? Romance was the only one he had any kind of positive thing in, and it was supposed to be like a fated encounter, something really positive, which obviously we saw that in his little outing with Satsuki. So it's got me thinking that if I go back to my theory of like one of them killed the other, it makes more sense that Naori would have killed Ayato then, because a grave misfortune would definitely be being killed by your best friend. But also you could flip it the other way around too. Maybe his grave misfortune is having to be placed in a situation where he has to kill his best friend, aka Ayato killing Naori. Could make sense. I don't know. I still kind of lean towards Naori being the person though, right? At this point, I'm fully convinced that Nanako is the one carrying out these deeds. Not necessarily the mastermind behind it all, but Nanako is the one carrying out the deeds. And I'm pretty damn sure she's getting her supplies from Karen, who we know now is like the current head of the pharmaceutical company, right? And it would kind of make sense that it could lean towards being Naori, right? Because, when Masaki links up with Meguri, right? He mentions Karen. He mentions how Karen's someone he definitely wants to avoid, someone he specifically does not want to see again. But you notice that he never refers to Karen as his sister. He never says anything like that. And if you listen to like the voice lines, it's not like a localization thing where they didn't, translate one of the honorifics properly. He genuinely never refers to her as his sister. So that leads me to think it could be Naori who had killed Ayato, and that could easily draw Karen's ire, right? Because she clearly had a very strong attachment to her brother. So if through some way she learned that Naori had killed Ayato, I could definitely see her being someone who wants to get revenge for that, right? Especially after he would run away from the village and leave it in shambles like that. That's where I'm at now. I'm pretty sure Masaki is actually Naori. I still think, and if it is Naori, I still think it was a ballsy move to put his actual name on that missing persons report he filled out. But I don't know, things just feel like they fit better if it's Naori, in my personal opinion. There are plenty of other things I talked about in the previous recording session that I think like point that way as well. But like I've also said, there's plenty of ways. Like pretty much everything I have that points towards Naori could potentially point towards Ayato as well. I just like the theory of Naori just a bit better. Like I said, I'm pretty certain Nanako is the one carrying out these murders. Unsure whether she's the mastermind or not. Pretty sure she isn't, but could possibly be. Pretty sure Karen's at the top of the list. I'm pretty sure it's not just some red herring they threw us when we see her in the hospital. When Reiji goes to see Yamanoche at some point. That's where I'm at now. That's where I'm at now. So where we had last left off was right after the murder of Megari. That's where we last left off. She got murdered, it faded to black, and this is where we saved. Reiji wakes up to the phone call. Undoubtedly, it's going to be about Megari's murder. So without further ado, let's jump into it, shall we? Drowsiness slowly purged itself from my system as I checked the clock. It was 7 a.m. Fortunately for me, that meant Yukari was probably still around to answer.
Hi.
Like clockwork. Still, I knew I'd have to get up anyway since the phone was likely for me. And so I got out my futon and grabbed my carton of cigarettes. I crunched one between my lips only to remember I didn't keep an ashtray in the house. Maybe declaring the house a no smoking zone had been short-sighted on my part. Guess I'll just have to save it for the office. Boy, this sucks.
おはようございます、兄さん。まさきさんからお電話がありましたよ。
まさきから。
Now that I hadn't seen coming. Did something happen?
事務所に警察の柳沼さんからお電話があったそうです。
Yaginuma, huh? There must have been a development in the case. What about when I'd expected one, too?
あれゆかり、あいつにここの電話番号を教えたのか
I knew I hadn't, at least. Though really, that was totally my fault for forgetting.
ええ、昨日事務所の片付けをした時に。そうそう。兄さん、洗濯物はきちんと持ってきてくださいと言ってます。
悪い悪い。次からは。ってしばらくは向こうに泊まることもないか。
I picked up the phone and dialed the MPD. Though the city's telephone system was automatic, the police's internal line still used a manual service. Thus, I had to ask the operator to patch me through to CID Section 1.
はい、捜査一課。
柳沼、時坂だ。事務所に電話したそうだな。
3件目の発生です。場所はお茶の水のホテル。
I hate it when I'm right. And I'd been hoping to have a solid suspect before a third victim popped up, too.
警察の怠慢をそちられても仕方ありませんね。何せ、1件目の被疑者が現場で目撃されていますから。
The suspect in the first murder was witness said the same. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ooh, so that's interesting. So I kind of speculated it was more of a revenge plot, right? That Karen and it still could be. But are they purposely doing it to try to set Masaki up for it? Which obviously wouldn't make sense with the girl from Senri, right? She was the second victim, and that, as far as we know, doesn't connect back to Masaki anyway. Especially because Masaki was comatose in the hospital at that time, right? That's a good question. See, that's the one that kind of like throws a little wrench in that plan, is that second girl. But that second woman we don't really know a lot about, so you can't just totally write her off either. For all we know, there could be some connection. Well, also what it could be is she's a follower of Senri, right? Which clearly had origins in Hitogata, if I'm not being mistaken. That following, that religious group there, is essentially what Senri ended up becoming, or what ended up becoming Senri. So it could be tied back to that. They still could be in some way connected to Hitogata. Maybe not necessarily Masaki, but could be connected to Hitogata in some fashion. That is true. Wait. The suspect in Mayo Kamizono's case was a dumbass.
被害者の身元は
ホテルの機長によると、高宮めぐみ、旅行者のようです。
そうか。
That's a suspect as much when I heard that nitwit was the suspect. But why her?
目撃されたバカは俺の事務所にいる。
じゃあさっきのはどういうことですか？
暴れられても厄介だ。とっとと身柄を確保してくれ。
当然です。
Aganuma abruptly hung up. God damn it. I cursed myself. Though I'd actually known the victim this time around, I wasn't the least bit upset. I was growing numb to all the death around me. No, I was breaking.
兄さん、何かあったのですね。
Yukuri timidly called out to me, concern sculpting her features.
出かけてくる。昨日正木に会ったのは何時頃だ
6時半から7時前です。正木さんが何か。
心配することはないから。お前は授業があるだろ。
それでは行ってまいります。
Yukuri exited the living room. God damn it. Sighed again. Nice going, jackass. Even a toddler could have figured out something happened to Masaki from the way you acted. I sped down the Ome highway in my car as fast as I could, ultimately finding multiple police cars surrounding my agency by the time I pulled up. It's almost like they had a serial killer cornered in there, which, depending on the circumstances, may have been a fitting analogy.
さっさと歩け。
I heard Yaganuma roar as he marched out my building with that handcuffed nitwit in tow.
時坂さん、これは一体どういうことですか？
Took the words right out of my mouth.
いいから連れて行ってくれ。柳沼、あいつに被害者のことは話していないよ。
暴れられると面倒ですからね。まあそれでも抵抗はされましたが。
やらなことはあまりしないでくれよ。
でしょうね。奴が犯人ならば最初の電話の後に逃亡しているでしょうから。
I watched as Masaki was crammed into a police car and taken away. It was for the best, though. I knew it was better that I investigated on my own rather than having to deal with him going on a rampage for ill-conceived revenge.
行くか、柳沼。
I followed Yaginuma's police car all the way to a hotel on top of a hill in Ochanomizu. The building was already cordoned off with a police rope.
すでに検視作業は始まっているはずです。
Oh, so we get to see Natsume again? Yay. Natsume was probably on the scene then.
僕はロビーですることがあるので、先輩は現場へお願いします。
Of course. Yaginuma entered the hotel after leaving me with those instructions. He hadn't told me exactly where the crime scene was, but I I doubted I'd have trouble finding it. After all, those cops were there strictly to preserve that room. I followed Yaginuma into the lobby. The inside was just as packed with officers as the outside. Went up to the stairs after asking a nearby cop for the location of the crime scene. Once there, I entered the room with the most officers around and encountered Natsume inspecting the crime scene.
時坂はお越しやす。
被害者は
It was then that I noticed Natsume was scrutinizing the closet. The woman's corpse was hanging there like a pair of slacks. I offered a silent prayer before studying her face. It was her, all right. The victim was the very same woman who'd come to me in order to find someone. Her agape lips were coated with dried blood. What stood out most of all was her unnaturally swollen abdomen.
同じですな。3件目です。
Of course I am.
調べときます。
え
I donned gloves and silently asked Meguri for forgiveness. Based on the past murders, I knew I most likely wouldn't find anything of note apart from the contents of her abdomen. So instead, I had to focus on why she'd been killed. Well, there's the clear head wound, so let's look at that first.
ホテルの記帳によりますと、殺されたのは高宮めぐりさん。富山からこっちに出てきてたみたいですね。
知ってます。
なんや、八木沼藩から聞いてました？
ま、そんなところです。
I decided to explain the story to Natsume later. This wasn't an appropriate time to let her play the guessing game.
後頭部に傷がありますね。
There's clearly a wound on the front of her head, too.
せやね。そこにある大理石の置き時計で殴ったようですな。
Natsume gestured to a clock on the floor. The glass protecting the face was shattered while the hands were stopped around 5 o'clock. Was that the time of the murder?
死因は失血による多臓器不全と思われます。頭部の挫創だけではせいぜい脳震盪でしょうし。
Which meant the killer likely knocked her out first before turning to homicide.
上園真世には薬を使っていましたね。糸瀬瑞希の時は
お薬を使われた痕跡はありませんでした。多分ですけど、こう
Oh.
扉が開いて
Okay,
出会い頭にブスッとお腹刺したんと思いますよ。
That makes sense, seeing as how no other wounds have been found. If so, then the killer's MO differed for each victim, as far as the initial strike was concerned, anyway. True enough. Okay. Is there any significance to that? True. Okay, so yeah, there is something to that, isn't there? Because clearly that means that the killer took pity on Mayu and Megari, right? The Itase girl, like Natsumi said, just got stabbed right out the gate. She opened the door and probably got shanked right then and there. Whereas Mayu was drugged and Megari, she tried to knock out. She had tried to, knock her unconscious, but it didn't work. And it would make sense, because if I'm right and Nanako is the one carrying out the killings, Nanako works at the Kichiki hospital, so clearly she would have been, and she's somewhat, and yeah, even Yamanouchi pointed this out, that she said the nurse Sawashiro was close with Mayu, right? Which Sawashiro would be Nanako, if I remember correctly. So we know that Nanako works at the Kichiki hospital. She would have known Mayu, and it sounds like she would have been close with Mayu in some capacity. So yeah, she would have tried to make things easy, well, not necessarily easy, but she would have tried to have been less brutal with Mayu, because that's someone she liked. And the same with Megari. Megari is one of these girls she watched, grow up in the village, right? Someone she was relatively close to. So she tried to, knock her unconscious before doing anything. Makes sense. So clearly, either there's some deeper feelings with the second victim, like some real, aggressive, almost hatred-like feelings, or there's just, she has so many positive feelings for victims 1 and 3 that she tried to give them less painful outs. That's how I'm seeing this. Also, one thing I want to check, what do we have for, do you have text box opacity? Oh, you do. Oh, I never even thought about that. Oh, whoops, that's the wrong button. I'm at 100% capacity. Damn it, that still doesn't cover up the wound, though. I still have to censor shit. So, might as well just keep it where it was. Maybe. It was too early to theorize at this point. Bitch, I've been theorizing from the jump. What are you talking about? Better check something else. Arms? Bells for suspending the corpse by its arms.
値札もついとりますし、そこの買い物袋から引っ張り出したんと思います。
The bags read Yokohama. So she was strung up with the objects produced on site, just like the previous 2 victims, huh? But why is the murderer going through all the effort to suspend the bodies each time? My best guess is that it was some sort of allusion to Jesus' crucifixion, maybe. Though, even if it were, I had no idea what that could signify. Well, okay, let's check the abdomen. I crouched in front of the body and studied the stitched incision in the abdomen. The MO here was exactly the same as the other 2 homicides. However, there were clearly fewer organs strewn about the floor this time. In other words, our murderer must have found a way to do their work without leaving as much of a mess.
仏藩を裁いたのはこっちの床ですやろね。
Natsumi pointed out a spot on the floor. She was right, and that was likely where Megari Takamiya had been murdered. Specks of blood trailed from that spot to the closet, likely left when the body was dragged over. Furthermore, a blood-stained blanket sat atop the messy bed. The killer had probably used it to wrap the body when they moved it.
一通り確認したら声かけておくれやす。
Bag? All sorts of purchases filled the bags labeled Yokohama. They were probably souvenirs she'd been planning to give friends back home. chest. Meguri Takamiya's clothes were torn and exposed her abdomen, just like the previous two victims. I could tell our murderer was getting used to their handiwork. The tears in the clothes were terribly frayed, meaning they'd likely been ripped apart with a knife rather than scissors. Had they gotten in the way of eviscerating the abdomen, or did the killer do it precisely to show off the abdomen? Unfortunately, I highly doubted we'd be getting an answer to that question anytime soon. Anything in like the backdrop? Yeah. Clothes were hanging next to the body. And again, this was exactly where they were supposed to be. Not bodies. The sooner we got her down, the better. She did purposely put blood on her lips as lipstick, right? Meguri Takamiya had appeared to have been knocked out by a blow to her head. Okay, but the lipstick? Okay, no. What about the blood on her collarbone here? Nope, that's still that area. What? Torn apart, the shorts. Meguri Takamiya's stockings were drenched with blood. No, stockings, my bad.
脱がされたような跡はありまへんね。そのままお腹切ったんでしょうね。
Her stockings had been rolled down with her underwear, and yet the killer had gone for the abdomen like always. Not seeing anything else. I assume we're done then? Because that's about all I can do for now. Alright.
夏目さん、お願いします。
はいな。
An officer untied the belt suspending the body, then lifted the corpse and set it atop a stretcher on the floor. Once ready, Natsume cut the thread with scissors. With that size, she pulled out. A blood-soaked clay doll. It was nearly identical to the ones that had come before, naturally. That said, it did look somewhat smaller than the others. Yet another sign the killer was learning, adjusting the size to make them easier to fit their victims. But as great as it would be if we could learn more from that, nothing else stuck out just from looking at the thing.
指紋の有無や土の出所などを調べてください。
分かっております。前のも含めて科捜研に回しときますさかい。
よろしくお願いします。
それじゃ運び出します。
Body was shrouded by a sheet and hauled off on the stretcher. All that remained was the feeder of death and numerous forensic officers. The Blessed Congregation's emblem was nowhere to be found. Did that mean they really had nothing to do with this? Meguri Takamiya was from Toyama, so she likely hadn't been part of a Tokyo cult. Then again, you never knew.
殺されたのがいつ頃かわかりますか？
せやな。おそらく12時間以上は経っとると思います。
5時頃で止まっていましたね。そうなるとあれは朝ではなく昨夕の5時ということになると思いますが。
それは無理ですよ、先輩。
Aginuma entered the room.
どういうことです？
被害者は昨日の夕方5時半頃、男と戻ってきたことが分かっています。つまりその時計の針は本来の犯行時刻を隠すために。
男ですか？
写真を見せれば一発でしたよ。
Aginuma smirked at me. Must be Masaki.
さらにホテルのフロントの話では、男が出て行ったところを目撃していないそうです。
Ah! Yep.
裏口の扉の鍵が開いていたそうです。
He left out the back door to avoid Nanako coming in. And that's what makes him look even more suspicious. Way to go.
犯行も裏口から逃走したの？
その可能性は大いにあるでしょうね。
All this coming from the guy who just said he thinks Masaki is innocent. Probably just trying to narrow the possibilities at least. That's what I chose to believe
う
anyway.
ちの妹が6時半から7時に事務所でバカと会っている。正確な犯行時刻が出れば無実は立証されると思うが。
新宿からここまで30分かかると考えて6時には出たことになりますね。
7時半以降であれば可能性はあるな。
I had no choice but to admit that.
死亡推定時刻がはっきりせんと何とも言えまへんわ。
そうですね。
被害者と正木智之との関係は何かご存知ですか？
被害者はうちに人探しの依頼をしに来た。
元から顔見知りだったのならば同郷だったのかもしれませんね。富山県西砺波郡人形集落。いや、人型か。
人形？
Clay dolls found in the victim's abdomens immediately came to mind. No, hold up. I get what he's implying. We don't know for sure those were dolls. That's just the assumption we made. Then again, maybe they would call them dolls, even if they're supposed to be fetuses.
そうや、富山といえば土人形が有名ですな。
どう違うんですか？
陶器のお人形さんに色をつけたものだったはずどす。
That was completely different then. Still, maybe the region merited some scrutiny. Not to mention that settlement could indeed have been the Nitwit's
柳
hometown.
沼、あのバカの取り調べはするのか？
少なくとも生前の被害者を最後に目撃している人物でしょうからね。
分かった。あまり追い詰めて自殺なんかされないよう気をつけてくれ。
僕としてはそれでも構いませんよ。奴が犯人であると結論付けられますからね。今までの3人中2人まで関わりがあれば十分です。
ほいで次の事件が起こりましたら飽きまへんや
Couldn't have said it better myself.
もちろん通常の捜査は続けますよ。真犯人を逃がしてはただのバカですからね。先輩は適当に彼を弁護できる材料を探していてください。
そうさせてもらう。奴のことでまだ調べなくてはならないことがあるんでね。
That nitwit probably wouldn't spill anything unless I shoved whatever truth he was hiding right in his face. In order to do that, I need to figure out his real name. Doing so would possibly unveil his relationship with Megari Takamiya and shed light on the reason why she and the others were murdered. Yaginuma was right. The fact that Masaki was was connected to most of the victims made it hard to believe he had nothing to do with this case. I knew this whole thing was a detour, but it was all I could do since we didn't have another suspect on our hands.